Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. What in the world are people talking about these days? You're out there, you hear the topics, subjects, and stories that capture national attention. So much of it is of a trivial pop culture hype and political pandering nature that it can make you wonder how humanity has achieved so much over the years despite this addiction to nonsense. Yet of all the meaningless words bantered back and forth, there is one that strikes an alarming tone whenever it is discussed. Should people be allowed to get married if their genitalia match? It is the opinion of this show that this particular issue in the public forum is one of discrimination, ignorance, and ultimately illustrates a deeply seated lack of humanitarian ethic in all who oppose it. There is much more to this world than the social standards handed down by generations past. And many great conversations we could be having in the public forum are being ignored because of these divisive, hate-hearted, harboring, outdated social contract nonsense subjects. Wake up! The world has moved beyond this nonsense. The time has come for compassion. The time has come for intellectual curiosity. The time has come once again to gather together for another great conversation on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
It's science to you, Blair.
Happy Thursday, Justin.
It is Thursday. That means we must do more science show stuff this week in science. Yes, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Science. We have got a ton of sciencey stories for you today. I've got about a dozen stories sitting here in front of me, all vying to be the ones told today. Hopefully I can get through half of them. That would be fantastic. But I've got stories on autism, on accidental cancer cure, evidence of carbons, perhaps biological on Mars. Maybe not. That's a teaser. Maybe we'll find out during that story. And some interesting statistical information on the potential new health care that's been proposed compared to what people have currently. What'd you bring for us, Blair?
I have a story about why we can see in color, deadly video gaming skills, and the latest silly cancer correlation. Speaking of cancer.
Silly cancer.
Yeah.
It's always correlating.
Well, the correlation
itself.
is silly, not cancer.
Right.
But.
Oh, is that I've got cancer, but it's okay. It's the silly kind. It's just the silly kind. All right, let's start it off. Jump right into this big news coming from the planet Mars. So they have been discovering these molecules containing large chains of carbon and hydrogen, which are considered one of the main building blocks for life on Earth. They've been discovering them in meteorites that originated from Mars. And so the question has been, is this evidence of life on Mars? Could these carbon chains and hydrogen chains be evidence that life once existed or currently exists on the planet Mars? Well, they did some checking on with the from the Carnegie's Andrew Steele provides strong evidence that this carbon did originate on Mars, but that it's not biological. These findings give researchers insight into the chemical processes taking place on Mars and will help future requests for evidence of ancient or modern Martian life. It is published this week in Science Express. So there's been little agreement amongst the scientists about the origin of large carbon molecules detected on the Martian meteorites. There have been plenty of theories bantered about out there. Are they remnants of past life or the evidence of current life, or are they just chemical reactions? So Steele's team examined samples from 11 Martian meteorites whose ages span about 4.2 billion years of Martian history. They detected large carbon compounds in 10 of them. Molecules were found inside grains of crystallized minerals. So they're really drilling down into the particulates of these meteorite samples. Using an array of sophisticated research techniques, the team was able to show that at least some of the macromolecules of carbon were indigenous to the meteorites themselves and were not a contamination from Earth. So they ruled out this is, it landed on Earth and then this carbon thing took place. Next, the team looked at the carbon molecules in relation to their minerals in the meteorites to see what kinds of chemical processing these samples endured before arriving to Earth. So we're looking at the travel from Mars to Earth, or perhaps the entry to the atmosphere. Crystalline grains encased in carbon compounds provided a window into the carbon molecules, how the carbon molecules were created. Their findings indicate that the carbon was created during volcanism on Mars. That's not Vulcans on Mars. That is volcanoes on Mars. And show that Mars has been doing organic chemistry for most of its history. These findings show that the storage of reduced carbon molecules on Mars occurred throughout the planet's history and might have been similar to processes that occurred on the ancient Earth. Understanding the genesis of these non-biological carbon-containing macromolecules on Mars is crucial for developing future missions to detect evidence of life on our neighboring planet. So it looks like not necessarily means that there's life on Mars after all.
Right. But it's a good starting point. I mean, the fact that there's carbon there means that we have some of the fundamental building blocks for what brought life about here. So that's, I don't know, it's encouraging to me that we can find the same, like I said, the same building blocks on another planet that was used here to make life happen, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of a story that says, well, it doesn't mean that these are organic compounds, but the fact that they exist, right, and that's what we're looking for because that's the precursor, means that it's got the stuff to make it.
Right.
It could happen there.
So just mix that with a little bit of liquid water, give it a few million years, maybe there'll be some life out there.
Yeah. Or again, as you know, we should just make our own, right? Make our own life form, make our own microbes that would be suited to living on Mars, and send it there. And just see what happens, you know.
Yeah, just see if evolution will just happen again.
You know, maybe future Martians will be like, Earth seemed like it could have been a planet that sustained life once. Let's go investigate, you know?
Yeah, well, it would be nice if then, you know, through natural processes, all of a sudden we had plants on Mars, and then it would be really easy for us to go over there, and maybe there would be an atmosphere and oxygen.
That's the thing. We'd have to terraform it, and I think that would start with microbes. You know, that's the sort of base life form building block of this planet's whole ecosystem is microbes. So we've got to create microbes that would survive on Mars and start populating it. And then, you know, send higher tiered life forms along as it progresses, as it becomes habitable for them, and sort of try to recreate the evolution of life on this planet synthetically. I think we could do it. I think we have the technology, if not quite the will. Yeah, right. Strengths. We'd have to wait a billion years for it to happen naturally. But that's what I'm saying. We could, if we have the ability to get this in motion a little quicker, we could kickstart it. You know, we could really push it along. Maybe get it done.
But do we want to, or do we want to see what's going to happen on its own? That's what I'd be more interested to see, because if you could somehow recreate something, especially a life form out of the primordial ooze that was here, if you could recreate that on another planet, that would be like the ultimate proof of evolution.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, we'd have to wait. We'd have to wait too long.
Right. Well, I guess first we'd have to invent a time machine.
I don't want to wait a billion years. I want it to happen tomorrow. I want to put microbes and like some kind of flatworm and amoeba, like some plants that'll survive. I want to get it all up there at one shot, one rocket shot.
Right.
What you got, Blair? What'd you bring?
Well, let's see. So I have a story about violent video games. We've heard a lot of things about violent video games and what they might be the cause of, but a new study shows that playing violent video games with gun-like controllers and humanoid targets in the game can improve shooting accuracy. They found that they took 151 college students, these researchers, they had them play different types of video games. There were violent ones and non-violent ones. And even the violent ones, they broke up into games with human targets and non-human targets, non-humanoid targets, I guess. And they used games where they were rewarded for killing the humanoids, obviously, and then hitting their heads specifically, which is pretty common in video games today. And after only a 20-minute session of playing the video game, they took these participants and they had them shoot 16 bullets from a realistic gun, and they had them shoot at life-size human-shaped mannequins. And what they found was that they were 33% more accurate at shooting these mannequins if they had been playing the game that was violent with a gun-like controller. And this was the really interesting thing. Game-exposed subjects targeted the head 99% more often.
Wow.
And they even controlled for things like firearm experience, attitudes about gun use, amount of exposure to violent shooting games, and overall aggressiveness of the player. They controlled for all these things, and they still found this huge percentage increase of accuracy and likeliness of aiming for the head. Which is interesting to me. I mean, some of it's kind of a duh, right? Because if you're using a gun controller, sure, you're going to be better at shooting from that. But if you think about things like recoil and the weight of a real gun versus a gun controller, there's lots of things that are different. And not to mention, you would think that if I was shooting an alien that had a human form in a video game, I would aim for the head, obviously. But if you're shooting at an actual human mannequin, maybe you wouldn't shoot for the head.
Small.
I don't know.
Yeah. But it gets so much smaller than if it's a giant alien. But wait a sec. So was this two groups that both played the game, but one had a game controller and one had one had a regular controller, one had a gun-like controller?
They had lots of different groups. So they had, for example, they had a group of people that played non-violent video games and a group of people that played a violent video game. But then they broke up the violent video games into humanoid targets and non-humanoid targets. But my understanding is that all of the violent video games had gun controllers.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I totally agree, though. That seems illogical. Like, you wouldn't think that, I don't care how many headshots you've gotten in your favorite first-person shooter. You go out there with a real gun, like you said, recoil, weight, all that stuff. You wouldn't think it would translate, right? You wouldn't think that would have given you actual practice.
Right, exactly. Especially when you think about sitting maybe 2 feet from a video screen versus being 100 yards away from a target.
Yeah, which is
so
very
different.
Difficult. That's the dog target. That's a really hard one to hit. But there is something kind of interesting, and maybe it's in the type of games, because other research has shown that first-person shooters increase eyesight considerably, increase your grayscale. And it's kind of interesting because it goes back to this sort of mystic eye healer who consulted Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley writes a lot about this guy, who used to do exercises to sort of train the eye, which is he'd have you do eagle exercises. The idea being eagles are constantly moving their eyes around. He had noticed in nature, and they have fantastic vision. So one of the ways that Aldous Huxley improved his vision through I can't remember the guy's name. Through his process or procedures, he'd move his eyes all around real fast, back and forth, so that everything's kind of blurry, and then focus on something. Move the eyes back and forth, focus on something else. And they sort of noticed this also works when playing first-person shooters because you're looking all around the screen, constantly moving your eyes. And it turns out it has nothing to do with the eyeball itself or the muscles of the eye becoming more acute. It's the brain. The brain needing to quickly capture visual information and is sort of being asked to do this rapidly over and over and over and over again.
Right.
So that it actually increased grayscale vision. So I kind of wonder, right? Like, is it those games with the shooter games actually, is it an improvement of eyesight and eye-hand coordination together that's giving them a little more accuracy?
Right.
Because a lot of the non-violent games, they're sedentary. There's not a lot of quick-moving, look-around, fast decision stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that definitely dominates the field now is the first-person shooter game. So I'm not surprised that there's not a lot of other options for what is going to help you with that kind of focus control and things like that, other than a first-person shooter game.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
Cool.
What else do you have?
This is something. This might be a correlative study, and it's new research. It's local up here. It's the UC Davis researchers have found that mothers who had fevers during their pregnancies were more than twice as likely to have a child with autism or a developmental delay than were mothers who did not have a fever or who took medication to counter the effects. Very interesting. This is a quote here from Osani Zerbo, lead author of the study. Our study provides strong evidence that controlling fevers while pregnant may be effective in modifying the risk of having a child with autism or developmental delay. We recommend that pregnant women who develop fever take antipyretic medications and seek medical attention if their fever persists. And, you know, there's so much evidence, though. This does make sense in a way. It could. There's so much of the evidence of autism is that there are genetic factors at play. There's genetic inheritance. It runs in families, that sort of thing. But, you know, in development, when genes are being selected, an increased temperature could alter the gene selection of what's going on in the development of a child, or modify which ones are being expressed this way or that way. So that could be, it could be that simple, that something is creating an immune reaction, the fever's taking place, and if it happens at the right time, very interesting. But that's a great
even
warning.
if you simplify it more than that, you take it a step simpler. If you yourself have a fever that is too high or you maintain it for too long, it kills brain cells. So that kind of makes sense if you're generating brain cells, that maybe they would be more susceptible to a higher temperature just in the body.
Interesting. It says another one of the researchers involved here, since inflammatory state in the body accompanies obesity and diabetes as well as fever, natural question is, could inflammatory factors play a role in autism? She explains that when people are infected with bacteria or viruses, the body generally reacts by mounting a healing response that involves the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines from white blood cells into the bloodstream. Some cytokines are able to cross the placenta, could therefore reach the fetal central nervous system, potentially altering levels of neurotransmitters and brain development. Very well. So that's a great warning out there for pregnant women. Yeah, you know, we don't change the cat litter, right? Toxoplasma. Hold off on smoking for a while, right?
Right.
Don't drink more than like a half a glass of wine a week or something. And yeah, if you have a fever, get that fever down quickly. Go see your doctor over that one.
Right, and no caffeine either, right? Or less caffeine.
Probably no caffeine too.
Yeah,
you don't want
all of my pregnant friends went off caffeine. They were told it was dangerous for the baby.
Yeah, you don't want the kid to be all sprackety.
All right. Well, if you just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science with me, Blair, and Justin Jackson. So now I think it's time for some Animal Corner.
Blair's Animal Corner with Blair. She works at a zoo like Zippos.
It's true. So today I have a story about orangutans. We
Is
found
it
that
orangutans? Wait a second.
orangutans. Yes, orangutan is
orangutans?
wrong. Orangutan is wrong. There is no G at the end of orangutan.
But I thought it was just a... There's no orangutan then? They don't exist?
Mm-mm.
Oh, man.
Sorry, I crushed your dreams. Anyway, Sumatran orangutans delay puberty by up to 10 years to increase their chances with females. These orangutans, only the ones in Sumatra, can delay their puberty, meaning they won't develop their secondary sexual characteristics. They can delay it for up to 10 years. So a good example of a secondary sexual characteristic in a male orangutan are the large cheek flanges that come out and make them look like their face is wider than it is tall. But the reason that this would make sense is that male orangutans will monopolize, they call it, a group of females for up to weeks at a time. And so there can be really intense fighting and competition for control of the group of females. So any extra time for them to grow and get strong before they're signaled as a male that is ready to breed would help them to have better success when it is their time. And so what they found, they don't know how they do it, how they arrest their development, but they found that it does definitely increase their chances in controlling a group of females. But they also found that they will actually have earlier deaths if they delay their puberty. But I can see how it would still be advantageous, because if they have a few really good years, the females, that might replace many years of second best if they came into puberty earlier. So
there's still hope for me? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Have you delayed your puberty?
It's still delayed. I haven't committed to it yet. I'm waiting for the right moment.
You haven't gotten your cheek flanges yet?
Don't have my cheek flanges. Don't have my jowly jowls going yet. I'm waiting for the right moment to start controlling females. It's just not the time yet, but when the day comes, it may not live as long as anybody else, but oh yeah, it'll be nice.
Yeah, you let me know how that goes. But they haven't seen this in any other primates, which is cool. So it's just the orangutans, and it's just this one type of orangutan that they've seen it in. So it makes evolutionary sense, but at the same time, it's one little pocket that it's shown up and it's worked, but they still haven't figured out what the cause for it is. So I'm sure there's more to come on that.
Oh my goodness. I do think that works for people too. I certainly know people who delayed their social puberty, if that makes sense. Weren't really interacting that much with the opposite sex for a prolonged period of time. And yeah, as the chat room mentioned earlier, perhaps we're into comic books.
Right.
But have later on in life, because they were so focused on school and work and such, have a fantastic profession and the time to go out and meet the right person later on in life. And I know that always actually seems to work out better than the people who were, like getting married right after high school. Right?
Yeah, I could see how that's kind of the same thing. You're waiting until your assets have developed a little bit more before you enter the playing field. Yeah, it's probably less than a genetic trigger for that, but I guess it's a social trigger.
Yeah, and then there's the other thing too. It's like some people just weren't that sexy in like high school or college. And then later on, like late bloomers, all of a sudden you see somebody you haven't seen in like 10 years, like, wow, I have never met you before. Really? Really? We used to hang out in the same, how come I don't know you? Oh, you weren't super hot back then. Ah, that's why. Hey, this is a story that I like this. This sounds like it applies to me. Resilient people are more satisfied with life. So it says, when confronted with adverse situations, such as the loss of a loved one, some people never fully recover from the pain. Others, the majority, pull through and experiment experiment how the intensity of negative emotions grows dimmer with time until they adapt to the new situation. A third group is made up of individuals whose adversities have made them grow personally and whose life takes on new meaning, makes them feel stronger than they were before. Researchers at the Basic Psychology Unit at Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona analyzed the responses of 254 students from the Faculty of Psychology in different questionnaires. The purpose was to evaluate their level of satisfaction with life and find connections between their resilience and their capacity of emotional recovery. One of the components of emotional intelligence, which consists in the ability to control one's emotions and those of others. Research data shows that students who are more resilient, 20% of the surveyed, are more satisfied with their lives and are also those who believe they have control over their emotions and their state of mind. Resilience, therefore, has a positive prediction effect on the level of satisfaction with one's life. Some characteristics of being resilient can be worked on and improved, such as self-esteem, being able to regulate one's emotions. Learning these techniques can offer people resources needed to help them adapt and improve their quality of life, explains Dr. Joaquin T. Limonero, professor of the UAB Research Group on Stress and Health. Actually, I think I might have too much resilience. There's a certain point when I got into a car accident once. And I remember it was really bad. Somebody went through a red light, hit the car, it got twisted around, ended up facing the wrong way. Car was all twisted and mangled up. And this was a really long time ago, but I had been smoking in the car at the time. And the first thing I noticed after the accident was that I was still holding my cigarette, and it still like that had survived intact. I was like, "Wow, that's so awesome!" Right? Like that was my.
So did you sit there and finish your cigarette before you got out of the car?
I finished it, and then I hit the. I think I took out the rear view mirror. I was the passenger in the vehicle. I took out the rear view mirror, and I had like blood coming down. It was like all gruesome. The car's all twisted, just shattered glass across an entire intersection. Right? I got the cigarette. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I can't believe it survived. And then I went over to go check on the other car. I was like, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? And it wasn't, and I didn't notice, but that car had no scratches. It was a hit and run. The car that actually hit had managed to keep going for a while. But I think there's a certain amount of resilience, though, that might be too much. It's like a little too undeterred in the face of danger sometimes. It might be a lack of realistic fear of a situation.
Well, sometimes I feel like resilience, by definition, means that you're less likely to become depressed or upset when things don't work out for you. So that would lead to a higher satisfaction in your life because you're not going to let little problems get you down.
Because you have lower standards for a good day and a bad day.
Or maybe you're just a happier person, which is why you're resilient. You could take it that way, too, that the reason you dust yourself off and get up and try again is that you're not depressed. So you're more likely to kind of get right back on that horse.
It could be. Although I honestly think I'm slightly disassociative. It's, because like even in that car accident, it was almost, actually I think I would have been more compassionate, more worried about it if I'd seen it happen to somebody else. But it's almost like it did happen to somebody else. Because it was like, I was just sort of watching afterwards. Like, oh, wow. So this is after a car accident. This is what that looks like. Okay.
Right. I would also think that if you're super resilient, that means that you're going to keep trying things over and over again until they work out for you, which leads to a really good sense of satisfaction. If you try something over and over again and you finally succeed, it feels so good. Isn't that going to make you super happy about the decisions that you've made in your life?
Absolutely. As soon as I get one of these shows where I get all the stories right, I will be totally satisfied. But at this point, I'm going to have to go and read some of the stories that we're going to talk about next. So let's take a quick break. Let's go to the bridge. Let's go to the break. We'll be back very shortly with more This Week in Science.
Twis would like to thank Audible.com for sponsoring this episode of This Week in Science. Audible.com is the leading provider of audiobooks with over 75,000 different titles in a variety of genres. Twis has found many science-based books in the Audible library. You can start a free trial today and get an audiobook download for free. All you have to do is sign up at audiblepodcast.com/twis. audiblepodcast.com/TWIS. Go now for your free download. Twis also has merchandise you might enjoy. Head over to twis.org to purchase our 2010 Science Music Compilation CD. Yes, I said CD. And a World Robot Domination t-shirt. Twis is supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for our hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, and fun things we try to do for the show. We appreciate any amount, $2, $5, $10, even $100. You make this show possible. We accept donations through PayPal and have made the process easy by putting donation buttons on each show page on our website. That's www.twis.org. So go to the website, listen to the most recent episode, comment on the show, and make a donation. We thank you for your support. We couldn't do it without you.
Answers lie somewhere within this scatter plot. Our first assumptions were correct. Disprove the rest. It's hard. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. Methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. I couldn't see. I couldn't see.
And we're back with more This Week in Science. Oh, wait. Are we still at the break?
Nope, we're back.
Oh, we are back. Okay. So this is something that caught my eye. This is a very weird. I don't even think it's a correlation story. I think this is an actual difference that a drug has made in cancer stem cells. But it's one of those unique to science accidental discovery things that's pretty intriguing. So an antipsychotic drug that is typically used to treat patients with schizophrenia appears to be getting rid of cancer stem cells. And what it does is it gets them to differentiate into less threatening cell types. The discovery is reported in Cell Press Journal, Cell, on May 24th, comes after researchers screened hundreds of compounds in search of those that would selectively inhibit human cancer stem cells. And it may lead to pretty quickly end up in a clinical trial. You have to find something that's truly selective for cancer stem cells, says Mickey Bhatia, lead author of the study from McMaster University. We've been working for some time, and it's hard to find that exact formula. The survival of cancer patients is largely unchanged from 30 years ago, which is a horrible statistic. And many suspect that greater success will come by addressing the rare and chemotherapy-resistant cancer stem cells. Unlike normal stem cells, cancer stem cells resist differentiating into stable, non-dividing cell types. Bhatia's team exploited this difference to simultaneously screen compounds for the activity against human cancer stem cell versus normal human stem cells. So by testing hundreds of compounds, they identified nearly 20 potential cancer stem cell specific drugs. The one that appeared most promising is already in use. It's an antipsychotic drug, thioridazine, which is known to work against schizophrenia by targeting dopamine receptors in the brain. The drug doesn't appear to kill cancer stem cells, but rather encourages them to differentiate, thus exhausting the pool of self-renewing cells. Researchers showed that I can't pronounce this. Thioridazine kills leukemia stem cells without affecting normal blood stem cells, which is just an insanely phenomenal discovery. Comparing the proteins in leukemia versus normal blood cells helped to explain this specificity. The leukemia cells, but not normal blood cells, express a dopamine receptor on their surface. Dopamine receptors also appear on some breast cancer stem cells they found. This gives us some explanation, Bhatia said. It also suggests that dopamine receptors might serve as a biomarker for rare tumor-initiating cells. In light of the findings, Bhatia team is already planning for a clinical trial of the FDA-approved thioridazine in combination with standard anti-cancer drugs for an adult acute myeloid leukemia. We are excited about bringing this drug to patients. We hope to. We also hope our platform can now be a pipeline for other cancer stem cell drugs. So the discovery isn't exactly itself accidental, because we're certainly searching for this. But how amazing is it that what they found is already a drug that's being produced? That is so that's awesome.
I wonder if that's part of the process of looking for new cures, is they just randomly check drugs that are already on the market. I wonder if this does anything we weren't planning. Seems like probably they should. It seems like that happens a lot, that drugs made for one thing turn out to be really effective at something else.
Yeah, I once got prescribed something. I wish I could remember what it was, but it was a anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication that they had found people who took it quit smoking. Couldn't explain why, but there was this huge correlative. So, I got offered this as a way to quit smoking. And I got as far as I was like, really, I was like, an antidepressant thing, anti-anxiety medication, right? Like, what else is that going to do? But I read through the potential side effects, most of which were pretty mild, But there was one that just blew me away. It said, may cause false beliefs that cannot be refuted by facts.
It's a good one.
That was one of the potential side effects. I was like,
that's one of the best side effects I have ever heard. That's hilarious.
I'm gonna find religion through an antipsychotic. So I was like, yeah, you know what? I would rather avoid false beliefs that cannot be refuted by facts than quit smoking. I had to weigh those two.
Right. It's so funny too. You said that the dopamine receptor was found on the cancerous stem cells. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Isn't that wild? I had no idea.
Okay, so that seems like something we should have known already, that we should have looked at a cancer stem cell and gone, oh, there's dopamine receptors on this. Maybe we should look into that.
Yeah, and I mean that may be something that was already known. I don't know. I don't know if that was a known thing or not.
Yeah.
Uh, but no. I guess that I guess they did. I mean, I guess this is a discovery because they didn't know why it was working. But yeah, leukemia cells, but not normal blood cells, express a dopamine receptor on their surface. You would think leukemia cells, yeah, you would think that would be a known thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, and that I guess they already knew that it appeared on some breast cancer stem cell types. But how strange. Why is
Yeah.
there a dopamine receptor there? Like, what's that there for?
Yeah, if the only difference is that this one is cancerous and this one isn't, and there's a dopamine receptor on the cancerous one, that just doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that would be there.
Yeah, that is so strange. But it does explain why something that's designed to affect the dopamine receptors is working, is having an effect on these cancer stem cells. How
Yeah, well, it
completely
seems
wild.
like we need to just test every drug on the market for cancer right now, see if anything else shows up.
Well, or certainly anything now that has an effect on dopamine receptors.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Right.
the all of the antipsychotic drugs now should be, you know, tinker. Of course, I just hope that this doesn't mean to be cured from cancer that you have to have potential for false beliefs that can't be refuted by facts. I hope, hopefully that part can be separated from the drug compound. But what an encouraging story that is. My goodness.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. All right. Well, okay. I have quite an involved story about how we see color and why we see color, which is something that I'm very interested in. We'll get into why later. But as we all know, we see more colors than dogs, but we actually see a lot less than birds, reptiles, and insects, just to name a few. And then they found that the bacterial ancestors that we came from, that all vertebrates came from, that they could sense the difference between short wavelengths, that's the blue area of the spectrum, and long wavelengths, that's red, with color absorbing pigments. And they just had the two groups, the red color absorbing pigments, say that 3 times fast, and the blue color absorbing pigments. So all color vision has come from that basic system. And it was just a simple copy error. It would be a duplicate that had mutated of these genes that make the color absorbing pigments that over time turned into color vision that we have now. And that's where the cones that we talk about that are in our eyes that respond to specific wavelengths came from. It's all from this bacterial ancestor. And so a lot of animals, fish, birds, reptiles, amphibians, insects, they all have color sensitive pigments, and a lot of them have a lot more than we do. We have 3 kinds of cones. We have cones that see red, blue, and we developed the third over time that was green. Just to kind of give you a perspective, a lot of animals, the reptiles and birds, they have 4 groups of cones. Some shrimp have 12 different kinds of cones in their eye. They have 12
Wow.
different wavelengths that they can see. So that kind of gives you
Wow.
a good idea of all the colors that we're not seeing that are out there. The
Oh my
really
goodness.
interesting thing.
Shrimp get to see more of the world than we do?
Yeah, I know. Who'd have thought?
Wow. That's
The
amazing.
mammals lost all but the red and the blue. They only had the 2 mammals. They lost all the others. We're not sure why, but I guess they were superfluous. I'm not sure. They lost all of them. Primates developed the green, back again later. So we had the green cones, we lost them, all the mammals lost them, and then some primates got it back. I've heard a lot about trying to identify what colors animals can see and what colors they can't, and they've never really found a very good way of figuring that out. How do you ask a dog what colors it can see? Well, this group of scientists found this really cool experiment where they took dogs and they would show the dogs 3 shapes, 2 of the same color and 1 of a different color. And the dogs had been trained to touch the different color with their nose. And if they did that, then they got a treat. What they found was that the dogs could definitely tell blue from yellow, but they couldn't tell either of those from white or gray. And they couldn't distinguish yellow from red or green either. Basically, they're saying that dogs are the equivalent of a colorblind human. So dogs can see a lot more than black and white, which is how a lot of people think that dogs see, is just black and white. But they can see a lot more than that. They're just like a colorblind human. And this is where it got really interesting, because I learned a little bit about color blindness in this. And I am a rare colorblind woman.
You're colorblind, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So 8% of men, human men, are colorblind, and 0.5% of women are colorblind. And that's because it's a sex-linked trait. So if you guys want to look that up, basically it means the gene is a recessive gene and it's carried on the X chromosome only. So it's easier for men to be colorblind because they only have one copy of the gene. So they could get the colorblind gene and they wouldn't have another one to mask the recessive. But if you're a woman, there's a very good chance you're going to get the recessive masked with a dominant gene that makes you not colorblind. So it's even less likely for you to be colorblind if you're a woman because you have two X chromosomes.
Okay, so there's an image up that the control room has put up there. Can you see the images?
Yeah, so that one is a test image. Everyone's supposed to see that one. But if you go into the ones where there's the dots and there are numbers within the dots, see, okay, so that one, I can just see a yellow square. Can you see anything else besides a yellow square?
There's a red circle hiding in there as well.
Okay. I can't see it.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So
That's
basically,
so weird.
I was doing a little bit of research on this today because I got really curious about what that means for these different wavelengths in your eyes if you're colorblind. And essentially, I don't know without going to a doctor and taking a really extensive test which cones are deficient in me, but it's either the red or the green cones, which is why you say red, green, colorblind. It doesn't mean you can't see the difference between red and green. It means either your red or your green cones are deficient.
Right. So it seems like, because this is a sort of red to orange dots that are hiding within different shades of green. And so it seems like, I mean, my guess would be your red and green kind of overlap as almost the same color.
I can usually tell red and green apart, but I can't tell colors that are closer, like red and orange look the same to me. I can just see a yellow circle there. I don't know. Is there something else?
Right. There's red and kind of orangish square to the left of the image, hiding within the green.
Yeah, I can't see that.
That's interesting, because this test is actually more complicated than ones I've seen before. I had a friend who was colorblind, and they would do the same sort of test where they'd have different colors of red on a red background. You know, it's sort of the same sort of dot thing, but different variations of red, and they all looked the same red to him. But I've never seen where red is. Now, can you see the image in this one? This is
nope, I don't see anything. I just see dots.
Okay, so it's a boat, and it's so distinct to me. It's red. There's green and blue dots in there, but there's also red and orange. And it's the red and the orange that make up the ship in the middle, or the little sailboat.
Yeah, I can't see that. Some of my cones are deficient. But so here's the really cool thing, too. So because females carry two X chromosomes, and the color-sensing genes are on the X chromosome, some humans have 4 different kinds of cones. Mostly it's women because they have the two X chromosomes, but sometimes they will gain an extra wavelength absorbing cone in their eye so they can see a whole extra spectrum. It's very, very rare, and they haven't figured out how to test it so that they can relate it to something that we can understand. Because if you think about it, if we see every color that we think exists, how do you explain another color spectrum that we've never even been able to see or fathom?
Right. Right.
Which is where you get into this really interesting philosophical gray area of, is what I see as yellow the same thing that you call yellow? Or have we just been raised calling that yellow and it looks different to you? You can get into some really trippy stuff with that.
Well, and actually I've witnessed firsthand that I haven't seen it so different that, what we call yellow, somebody else sees as blue, because of course you'd have to be in somebody else's brain to experience that. But there's a really cool little exhibit experiment at the what's the big sciencey thing there in San Francisco? Not the Exploratorium.
There's the Exploratorium and the Academy of Sciences.
So no, it's the Exploratorium. Okay.
Okay.
And what it is it's this sort of disc of colored hues. And what you're supposed to do is I think they're all sort of yellow scale as I'm remembering this. And there's one big dot in the middle, and then there's all these other variations from dark to light that go around the outside. And your job is to see which one of the little dots matches the one in the center circle. And what was interesting, I can't remember. I think that's how this worked. But what was interesting is that I picked one and the other that was a perfect match. And the person that was with me was like, no way, this one over here matches. And it was like a couple away. And it was like we were seeing the lit color part differently than, I guess the middle part would have been a flat color or something like that. But we were seeing the combination of the two differently. That was really strange. And that's what the experiment was meant to show too, is that we will see hues of color differently than other people.
Right. Yeah, and so they were talking about why, in this article, they were talking about why mammals lost almost all of this color vision and then got some of it back just in some primates. And there's a few different theories, but basically it had to be evolutionarily advantageous for them to gain a whole extra set of cones. And so there are some theories that it has to do with sexual selection, because there's parts of primates that turn colors when they're mature and stuff like that. And then also there's a lot of these primates that live in areas where there's dangerous animals that use colors to warn the fact that they're poisonous or venomous. So you'd have to be able to see the colors that those animals are for that to work out. So that all makes sense.
You know what doesn't make sense to me? Why we don't all have night vision on a planet that's immersed in darkness half of the time. How come every species doesn't have excellent night vision?
Well, it's probably because we sleep at night.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess we would.
It's usually the easiest answer. So this is really cool too.
Maybe we'd be more nocturnal. I mean, when if we could see at night, I mean, maybe the reason that nocturnal animals like do all their business at night is because it's hotter in the day. You have to expend more energy, right? Maybe, the reason that they're nocturnal is because they can see at night. I think that if people could see at night, we'd have this whole thing reversed. We'd sleep during the day and then go out and do stuff at night. I think maybe it was the eyes that determined whether something was nocturnal or not.
I don't know. I think it has to do a lot with the fact of what your prey species is, especially if you're a predator, and when your prey species is awake.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were hunters and we were hunting animals that were awake during the day, it would be advantageous to us to be out during the day. Not to mention, if we're picking plants and we need to know what color something is to know if it's ripe, nobody can see color at night.
Oh,
so
right.
that would be important to see during the day.
Good speculatations. Hey,
go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, the last part of this thing that I really liked was that they actually did gene therapy on squirrel monkeys, which only have the 2 types of cones. So essentially they're colorblind monkeys. They did gene therapy on them and then did the same color vision tests they used on dogs afterwards to see if their brain actually registered the new cones in the animal. And they did. They could see yellow, green, and red. And when the study about the squirrel monkeys came out just a couple years ago, I remember a bunch of my friends calling me and sending me the article and going, "You need some gene therapy to fix your eyes." But I think I need a little more experimentation with some squirrel monkeys before I'd be ready to get some adjustment to my color vision.
I'm all ready to sign up for some shrimp therapy. What am I missing?
Yeah, 12 different types of color. Yeah.
Or would it be like there's all these, would it be like there's all these hidden colors within the colors that I'm seeing now? that would
maybe everything would just look splotchy. Yeah, I don't know.
Have all this splotchy other like other colors involved with it that would make everything kind of like tie-dye batik looking everywhere you looked. So it could be a dangerous thing, but I'd still go for it. I still want to see. I want to see those other 9 spectrums that the shrimp get to see that I can't. You're so lucky.
Your
so this
brain
is
can't
interesting.
Even handle it though. You couldn't even handle it. Your brain couldn't even handle all those colors.
My brain can handle anything.
All right, what do you got?
This is an interesting, maybe potential addition to the colony collapse scenario. It says a commonly used pesticide turns honeybees into picky eaters. This is from the University of California, San Diego. Biologists there have discovered that small doses of a commonly used crop pesticide turn honeybees into picky eaters and affect their ability to recruit nest mates to otherwise good sources of food. The results of their experiments detailed in this week's issue of the journal Experimental Biology have implications for what pesticides should be applied to bee-pollinated crops and shed light on one of the main culprits suspected to be behind recent declines in honeybee colonies. Since 2006, beekeepers in North America and Europe have lost about 1/3 of their managed bee colonies each year due to colony collapse disorder. Exact cause still remains unknown. This is a huge mystery and a tremendous, people who don't realize how important it is. This isn't about honey production. This isn't about affecting how much the price of honey is. This affects crops. This affects food. This is how we pollinate our agriculture. We don't do it by hand. In fact, I think the estimates it would be something in the neighborhood of $20 billion a year. It would cost the ag industry to have to try to do this pollination that they get from bees for free or for next to free. So this is, but now they sent into it was the, hang on, I lost. Okay. So researchers believe pesticides are contributing to the decline. They've looked at mites and disease and all sorts of other things. And it is true that the bees that we use, the honeybees that we have in North America, most of which, or a good portion of which are imports. They're from Europe. They're from a good percentage are from the Middle East. They're not natural inhabitants of North America, but this still wouldn't, natural sort of biological interactions wouldn't account for the colony collapse in Europe, where they have been there for many, many, many millions of generations. So it has started to come down to pesticides. That has become the main focus of research. One group of crop pesticides called neonicotinoids has received particular attention for beekeepers and researchers recently. The UC San Diego biologists focused their study on specific neonicotinoid known as imidacloprid, something or another. Imidacloprid, something, which has been banned for use in certain crops in some European countries already, and is being increasingly scrutinized in the United States, which means we should remove it, but perhaps it's people still want to use it because it's either cheap or we have one of those NAFTA agreements that we can get sued for stopping using it. In 2006, it was the 6th most commonly used pesticide in California. It is sold for agriculture and home garden use, says James Nia, a professor of biology at UC San Diego who headed the research project. It is known to affect bee learning and memory. So the two biologists found in their experiments that honeybees treated with a very small single dose of imidacloprid, comparable to what they would receive in nectar, became the picky eaters. In other words, bees preferred to only feed on sweeter nectar, refused nectars of lower sweetness that they would normally feed on, and that would have provided important sustenance for the entire colony. In addition, bees typically recruit their nest mates to good food. Like, come on, here, I'm going to shake. They do the little shake GPS. You go 2 shakes to the left, 3 to the right, bzz, 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 and then you're there. And then the other bees can figure out where the food is. So while they typically recruit nest mates to good food with the waggle dance, they discovered that the treated bees danced less. They were less interested in communicating where they found the good nectar. The two researchers point out that it's like they turned them to greedy. turned them picky and greedy at the same time. Two researchers point out that honeybees that prefer only sweet foods can dramatically reduce the amount of resources brought back to the colony. Further reductions in their food stores can occur when bees no longer communicate to their kin the location of the food source. And exposure to amounts of pesticide formerly considered safe may negatively affect the health of the entire honeybee colony. That's pretty wild.
So not only it's making them picky, but then it's making them picky for food that makes them act differently, and the food that isn't as good either, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It gets them to only pick the very sweet foods, and for some reason they don't communicate where they found food as much to the rest of the colony, and this is causing colony collapse. There's this strange parallel that's forming in my head of the collapse of capitalism nationwide. We get really picky. We'd stop sharing, stop communicating how to get to resources with others because we want it just for ourselves. So the test how the preference of sugary sources changed due to this pesticide. Scientists individually harnessed the bees so only their heads could move. By stimulating bees' antennae with sugar water, researchers were able to determine at what concentrations the sugar water was rewarding enough to feed on. Using an ascending range of sugar wafer from 0 to 50%, researchers touched the antenna of each bee to see if it extended its mouth parts. That's really watching these bees closely. Bees that were treated with the pesticide were less willing to feed on low concentrations of sugar water than those who were not treated. Biologists also observed how the pesticide affected bees' communication system. Bees communicate to each other location of food sources by that wiggle dance, and the number of wiggle dances performed indicates the attractiveness of the reward and corresponds to the number of nestmates recruited to good food. So basically, actually, it doesn't mean that they're being greedy. It means they're only pointing the nestmates to if they found the sweetest nectar. And because so much of the rest of it doesn't seem like good food to them anymore, they don't communicate it to the rest of the group. The rest of the group doesn't have as many missions to go run to go bring food back to the colony because they're getting less reports of food being found.
Essentially, it sounds to me like this pesticide is making couch potato bees. They're moving around less and they're eating sugary food.
Yeah, it says here too exactly that. In some cases, the affected bees stopped dancing completely.
Oh no.
Aww. So
I really wish we would pay more attention to these bees in trouble. Forget about the panda. It's time to focus on honeybees here.
I still like pandas and polar bears, but you're probably right. You're probably right. If the bee goes down, if we lose bees, there will be global. It will affect global food sources across this planet dramatically. I mean, that will
not just for us, for all animals. All animals are going to be in trouble if the bee goes down.
Absolutely, the bee is like we should all be bee worshippers. We should all have beehives on our roofs and make sure that the bees have plenty of places to live and plenty of. If we have to feed them sweet food by hand, each bee, we'll do it.
I'm sorry for my anti-panda propaganda. I apologize. Everyone knows how I feel about that. All right, do we have time for one quick more? I have one I really like.
One more. Bring it. Let's do it.
Okay, so snoring could increase your likelihood to get cancer.
What?
Snoring is bad for you. Here's the deal. A 22-year study found that snoring increases a person's risk of developing cancer. They narrowed people into 3 different kinds of sleep disordered breathing, SDB, into mild, moderate, and severe. And this was more than 1,500 people. And so basically the severe or even some of the moderate cases of sleep disordered breathing involve sleep apnea, which is basically when you stop breathing for a minute while you're sleeping. And this deprives the body of oxygen. It lowers the blood oxygen content. And so what they found was that people with severe cases of SDB were 4.8 times more likely, 4.8 times more likely, there we go, to develop cancer than those without it. People having moderate SDB were twice as likely to develop cancer as those without, and those with minor cases had a 10% increase.
Wow.
Low blood oxygen levels increases the growth of vessels that feed cancerous tumors. And so if you think about that for a second, it totally makes sense. If you stop breathing while you're sleeping, you're depriving your body of oxygen, and that's going to increase chances of contracting cancer. So the way I'm looking at this was that if you just snore and you don't ever stop breathing at night, you're probably fine. But if you're the intense snorer that kind of snores and then stops breathing and somebody has to shove you, you might be in trouble. So it might be time to get one of those super sexy sleep masks that keep you breathing at night if you have sleep apnea. It's going to keep you from getting cancer.
My goodness. One more thing to keep you from being able to fall asleep at night. You've got the sleep apnea. So I wonder if I do like maybe one exercise everybody can do to help stave off cancer would be to hyperventilate regularly.
I don't know if high blood oxygen levels are correlated to less cancer, though. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that's the next study.
Out. We could start.
You should write the University of Wisconsin
workout routine, right?
Yeah.
Have everybody hyperventilate on a daily basis.
Well, just exercising increases your blood oxygen content, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that just is another reason to exercise, too.
All right. Well, hey, I think we've done it. I think we've reached the end of another episode of This Week in Science.
Yay.
I'm kind of sad. I didn't ever want it to end. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Twis is also available as a podcast. Just search for This Week in Science in the iTunes directory, or if you have an Android device, you can look for Twis for Droid. That's Twis, the number 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace. Also available as Twis in the iPhone market thingy.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website, www.twis.org. We also want to hear from you, so email us at Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com or Justin@thisweekinscience.com.
Be sure to put Twis, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. But there is, of course, an easier way to contact us. You can just follow us and say hi at Dr. Kiki or at Jacksonfly on the Twitter or at Blair's Menagerie. Huh?
Yes, yay!
I got the big word. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that came to you in your sleep, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, most likely, with Dr. Kiki, and we hope you'll join us again for some more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from today's show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. 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 And this week in science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 Got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This week in science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in 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 science.